All right, so I want to just boil this down. I think that it's good to sometimes stop and look at the macro view of everything. If you're looking at for growth, I think companies should be thinking about two kind of macro priorities. And sometimes it's good just to hear this again. It's not rocket science, but it's good to kind of go back to the fundamentals. What I want to do over these next two episodes is just kind of lay out two top priorities. Again, very macro, that companies should be thinking about for growth. In this first episode, let's talk about sales. Like, there's this old adage that sales cover all sins. You may have heard that. And that's true.
Yeah. I mean,
you can make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. If your service is absolutely horrible, but you can replace those real quick with new sales. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we all know businesses in our careers that we've seen do that. You're like, oh my goodness, if you just actually maintain your services, you wouldn't have to always be sailing. You would just, be able to maintain your existing.
Your retention rate's going to be really low, but if your service blows, but
you're going to bring them in the door. Okay. Do your thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just good to remind business owners that, they all know they need new sales through the door, but if you focus on it as a priority instead of being spread thin across the company and all these different objectives, and said, okay, we're going to kind of just put all these plates down and just spin this one for a little while, get that one going really well, then you can come back and focus on how to deliver and deliver well. But let's talk about sales. So how do you actually get more sales? It's a simple thing, not always as easy to do. You have to have the right people on your team. If you're not an innate salesperson, again, talking to more of the smaller businesses to go out there and hunt and kill. But I think the first thing to cover is that you want a volume. You want to kind of build a sustainable volume of new opportunities that could turn into sales. And again, this is prioritizing it over other things.
Well, depending on what you're selling, it may be a long, sales process. You may have to introduce 6 months, a year in advance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the B2B world, you're 6 to 9 months.
You got to build a relationship before anybody's going to buy. Typically,
building relationships. But if you're prioritizing this and saying, okay, we're in this for the long term, we want to grow sales, start building those key relationships, both with referral partners and influencers in your industry, prospective buyers, and your current customers that could refer you. There's lots of avenues to get more sales. I want to cover a couple. One, I think to cover is that we need new channels, right? You potentially could need new channels. Let me say it that way. Where are you currently getting your sales? If you have been in business for a long time and you're, let's say, B2B or maybe even manufacturing specifically, you probably got a lot of your sales through events, conferences, or trade shows. And maybe it makes sense to look into some more modern marketing.
Yeah, you could have saturated that.
Right.
Market.
Excuse me. Your typical businesses, if you're a retail business or business to consumer type of business, maybe the traditional things that you're doing to get sales, you need to look a little bit wider view. Maybe you need to look at a wholesale, a commercial route. Yeah. Maybe look at partners that you can distribute your goods and services through. So new channels, I think, is a good thing to think about. If you are already in all the channels that you feel comfortable being in and that you want to own, then it's about optimizing those channels. So, one thing that can get people business tomorrow is referrals. Going back to people that have referred you in the past, they trust you, calling them up and saying, hey, we're looking to grow, and would you mind introducing us to this type of person?
I think that channel is the closest time frame to a sale.
Correct.
Correct. You may not have as much volume in that, but
the
I definitely believe
there.
That is the first priority in sales, is going to that. You're already established.
For sure.
Going to there. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and if you were to take this, literally and make this an exercise in your business and say, we're going to prioritize this, then start to build infrastructure around getting referrals consistently. New clients that come in, what's your method of asking for referrals? I mean, relationships is how businesses are built, period. The gigantic businesses, the small businesses, they're all built on relationships. So one-to-one referral is the best, highest quality, best type of next customer that you could have.
Yeah.
I would say to new offerings, and this kind of goes to your business. You are always looking for new things that you can offer your current customer base that will add value.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe there's some examples you have.
Over the last 20 years in banking, the one thing in banking is all of these offers are pretty much synonymous. And now with technology, pretty much all banks kind of offer the same thing. Right. It's going to be a bank account and access to pay your bills, to store your money. So it's like, what can you offer on top of that? Is it ease? Is it technology? So that's always kind of a balance, because really, we've got 4,400, 4,500 banks out there.
Yeah.
Really, there's not a whole lot of differentiation between their bank accounts. Let me get real. Banks out there will say, oh, we're so different.
Yeah.
Our type of product.
Well, it's
not really. They're all routing through the same.
It's kind of a utility, like you would have internet or water or gas. And if I think about it like that, I mean, there's sort of a monopoly on cable and internet and that kind of thing. But if there were 4,500 options,
I'd say, for bank accounts, it's almost more like a commodity. Like, you've got to have competition. You got to have that. And then it gets more specific on the lending side.
Right.
But for us, the thing that has to set aside for the banking is, yes, we've got the technology, and on top of that, the service.
Yeah.
Because when you commoditize banking, you're not going to be able to talk to anyone when there is ever an issue.
Yeah. I think too.
And on the business side, especially when, it's not like you're an employee, you're getting that paycheck every 2 weeks. Let's say we're government, you're happy with that paycheck, that's it. But if you're a business and you're operating and your livelihood is transactions in and out of your account, that's when you really have to source out and get a bank. I think the banks use that partnership out there a little too loosely, but have a great bank partner that you can trust, that even in the times when things are south, they'll still give you good information, and they're not always trying to sell you, but they're actually trying to do what's best for you.
Agreed. And from a customer standpoint, I would say it's like, I want the bank to always be quick to deliver, and I almost like operate without me having to think about it. It's like someone gets on stage and they're gonna sing. You don't want to feel nervous for them.
Yeah. Well, just yesterday I called my executive lender. So now rates in the past year have gone up. 500.
Yeah.
Points. Outrageous. So our loans that we did 5 years ago, they're resetting. Now we send out months ahead of time, hey, your rate's going to reset. But we know people, when they get that in the mail, a lot of times, are they astute enough to have an idea like, hey, you're set to prime? Well, 5 years ago, prime rate was 4.25. Now we're at 8%. Well, that's nearly double. So if they're floating with prime after their first 5 years thereafter, that's a big rate shock.
Yeah.
From 5 years ago. So that the lender will make sure we call them ahead of time, because they may get it in the mail, they see it, but then when they get that notice and their bill increases, what did you do?
Yeah, it's your fault. Yeah,
exactly.
I think,
and it was
heading it off, talking through it, giving them options.
We don't have a crystal ball. Right. Things went up. That's why we said that. But it is good to let them know ahead of time. Hey, it is going to reset. Here's your estimated payment a little bit ahead of time. Here are the things we can look at doing. Do we want to look at resetting it again for additional longer time?
Yeah.
How's business? This, have that conversation.
Yeah.
And right now, economists are thinking rates are going to go down next year. Do you believe that is?
Probably not.
No. So it may not be a good time to reset it for 5 years. Maybe you want to float for a year and then say, okay. But that is also a big difference of being with a community bank.
For sure.
if you have that fixed mortgage, if you have your commercial loan with a bigger bank, and it rate resets, no, we're not going to refix it. No, we're not going to do anything. Pay it off. But at least you can have a discussion. So
I think there's a lot of really good things to take away from this as it relates to growth, because if you're thinking, a lot of people that are listening to this aren't running a bank, but they run a business, and there's a lot of similarities there.
Oh yeah, they're going to have increases in their products they're selling.
Correct. Prices, they're getting increases from their suppliers. They have the same type of problems across the board. So if you're thinking about the customer proactively, then you're more likely to get referred. You're more likely to have an open conversation about referrals. You're more likely to have favorable conversations with new customers that are prospective, that may have been following you or, wanting to engage with you. I think that's the major point, is really just to think about, when you're thinking about growth, is to think about prioritizing new sales. I think now is a good time to think about that, because it's always good, but now, there's an unknown ahead of us for what the economic landscape will look like.
Mm-hmm.
So, pulling back and saying, how do we get new customers consistently that are high quality, is only going to benefit you in the long term as well as the short term.
Yeah. I think that should never leave the business owner, business operator's mind.
Right.
You should always be cognizant of that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So if you're in it for the second one, the second top priority that most businesses should be focused on, then the next episode is for you.